Hello, here we go. It's the Klopps podcast.
What is happening, everyone, and welcome back to another Klopps podcast. I'm Mick and I'm joined once again by Keifer MacDonald. How are we doing, Keifer? Nice to have you back.
Good, mate. I'm good. Excited about tomorrow. Looking forward to getting into it. But yeah, ultimately a bit of underlying nerves, but nothing far from the usual.
Yeah, not an unusual about going to Goodison, even if they were the best team in the world and they were in League 2, we'd still be shitting ourselves a little bit, wouldn't we? But yeah, nice to have you on, lad. And thanks to Farrell for coming on, Farrell Keeling from Empire the Cop. Nice one for jumping on and making your Klopps podcast debut. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I think a similar position to Keifer. I'm sort of excited, but there's that sort of hints of nerves of, it's still, the Merseyside derby, Goodison Park. I mean, they tend to raise the game, but you just have to think the form we're both on. I'm holding on to the form. I will be holding on to the form until the day, and then on the day I'll be especially nervous.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get on to that, but we'll have to start with obviously the Southampton game because we haven't touched on that yet. But obviously, boss 4-0 win. And that's 2 4-0s in a row in the Premier League after we just been talking before we started recording about absolutely battering Arsenal 4-0 as well, which was just an absolute joy to see. But I just want to drill into the Southampton game a little bit more. And what did you make of it overall, Keifer? 4-0. It was two goals for Jota, 1 goal for Thiago, and 1 goal for Virgil van Dijk. It was boss, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and especially kind of given the bigger picture of what we're about to enter with these kind of December fixtures, and even the week last week with the 3 home games, and obviously like you say coming off the back of Arsenal, then into like a semi-dead rubber with the Porto game, but obviously we handled that kind of as good as you can. Gave minutes to those who needed, and then Southampton again, probably a side again not in the best of form, but it's. Especially as we've seen at times this season, points can be dropped kind of when you least expect it. And like I said, obviously playing those 2 games earlier in the week, you kind of was hoping there would be no hangover. But I mean, it was probably as good as a 4-0 home win gets. You've got Thiago finding his feet even more, like with another fantastic performance, and you get minutes into Konate again. Henderson gets minutes, as you say. Jota kind of continues his excellent form of late. Obviously, Salah doesn't get on the score sheet, but he just shows again how kind of. Just how busy he is, and how kind of even without scoring, he gets the assist, doesn't he? And same for Mane. Robertson again, I thought he was fantastic after a slight dip early in the season. And it's nice to have that competition, isn't it? At fullback, we've been so reliant on him for a couple of years now. So I thought just Saturday as a whole was really good. I thought we looked really professional, and even the last half an hour was, I think both teams would have been happy to shake hands there and then and call it a day. But I mean, that's just as important. I think everyone would have liked to see 4, 5, 6, and 7. Sorry, but you've got to look at the next kind of 5 weeks and how many games of football this squad's going to be playing. So just to kind of, as I say, get minutes to those. Even Milner came back on; he had a brief cameo, didn't he? So yeah, like I say, it was as routine as it comes, but also there was plenty of positive signs and impressive signs going into, as you say, a big game tomorrow night.
Yeah, well, I think you've actually just encapsulated the Southampton review there perfectly. Might as well go on to Everton now. No, like I said, there was loads of positives, wasn't there? Farrell, Jota getting 2, and Hendo, like Keifer said, Henderson coming back in, and Konate getting minutes. There was so many, but Jota, I was looking at the stats there. He scored 21 goals in 46 appearances now, and he's got 7 goals already in the league, which is only 2 off what he got whole of last year. I think he only made 19 appearances last year, but to be 2 off that already just shows how much of a goal threat he is, isn't it?
Not a half bad signing when you actually sort of think about it. I mean, I remember sort of back in the day when there were just discussions about the possibility of signing him, and everyone sort of went, "Oh, he's this lad from Wolves. How is he Liverpool quality?" And he's obviously proved all the naysayers wrong. I mean, it's testament certainly to the form. If you have to sort of think, if Salah wasn't around putting the sort of numbers that he is putting in, would we be looking at Jota in an even more positive light? Because I mean, we're familiar with this by now, but Salah's numbers are absolutely out of this world. It's it's absolutely remarkable that he hasn't come away from the Ballon d'Or ceremony at least being placed in the top 3. I appreciate that we have to sort of consider the year. It's not just this season, but yeah, we'll talk about that another time, I'm sure. But I absolutely fundamentally agree with the point on Andy Robertson. It looks like the rest Klopp gave him sort of really has revitalized him, because if you sort of think, he's not had a rest, and it all goes back to that sort of prior season where Klopp couldn't really rotate his fullbacks because of all the trouble we were having at the centre half with Van Dijk out. Every centre half under the sun, bar Nat Phillips, out. So he was absolutely desperate for a break, and it's so clear that having come on against Southampton, and he's given that sort of energetic performance. We could see a revitalised sort of Robertson, hopefully for the rest of the season, and that's a massive asset and can't be understated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny because when footy's mad, isn't it? Because when you think like back, I don't know how long, maybe 6 months or whatever, and Tsimikas was kind of like, is he going to be good enough? And obviously Robertson was like the main fella, and then Tsimikas then gets a little bit of run in the team because of Robbo's injury, comes in and does boss against Burnley and other teams, and you're like, fucking hell, he's actually like, he's starting to acclimatise in a way that he's obviously been recruited for, and that's been boss to see on a Keifer, to see Tsimikas do that well, and also see Robbo then have to kind of raise his game as well, because obviously when Robertson sets standards that as high as he does, any dip is noticeable. I think that's the same for any world class player. If there's a dip, it's noticeable even more than maybe a mid range player. So it's boss to see Robbo back to his best again against Southampton.
Yeah, and I think Farrell touched on it there. He said, last season, I think obviously both the fullbacks kind of suffered, probably due to no fault of their own, but kind of the added kind of defensive responsibility that they kind of had to, uptake in the absence of, every centre half who got injured who seemed to, play for us. But I think Robertson will know more than anyone, won't he, the competition, because obviously the year he signed, obviously Moreno kind of had a bit of a revival, didn't he, until the December. I don't know if you remember. And he looked really good. And I think it was an injury against Spartak Moscow that kind of took Moreno kind of out of the firing line and kind of gave Robertson a chance in the to kind of get himself involved in kind of Klopp's plans. And he hasn't looked back since. And we've seen it with so many times. I think even Chamberlain kind of started to profit once Coutinho left. So they'll all, I think he'll know more than himself that he's needed a rest. But I don't think he's the kind of character, or certainly what you gauge from him and the way he speaks. He's not going to the kind of guy who's going to go to Klopp and say, look, I need to take this week off, you know what I mean, kind of thing, or I could do with a rest here and there. He's going to want to play every game, and that's a credit to him. But I think, as Farrell said, that break, it kind of looks like he's kind of revitalized, and he's kind of got that. I think in maybe the first couple of weeks of the season, he just looks very heavy-footed, didn't he? Kind of second to everything, and crosses weren't beating the first man, and it was obviously one of the fullbacks are kind of so essential to kind of what we do and what we do so well. It's more noticeable, isn't it, than maybe a fullback playing for someone else, kind of thing. So, like I say, a revitalised Robertson's only going to benefit Liverpool, and especially when you've got someone like Costas who's come in and he's not put a foot wrong yet. I don't think we've conceded, have we? While he's played, I think there was a stat that was 7 games, 7 clean sheets, which is no easy feat. So fair play to them, and it's a battle that I think everyone will kind of relish over the course of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've spent most of my life having no good left backs, so to have 2 at the same time, fucking hell, just thank your lucky stars. But like you said there, Keifer, as well, you said earlier, like about Salah, like not getting on a score sheet, but obviously got an assist, and there was obviously another stat that came out of that he hit 150 goals and assists, and only Alan Shearer and Thierry Henry have hit that number at a quicker rate, which is, I mean, it's fucking, you can just line up the Mo Salah stats, and they're just incredible, aren't they? They really are. But another one from that game, obviously, another 4-0 was we've now scored 39 goals in 13 games, which is a new record for us in the top flight, which is an average of 3 goals a game, which is amazing, really, isn't it, Farrell? Considering that's just craziness. An average of 3 per game in 13 games so far.
No, it's absolutely. I mean, tremendous. I think the one that as well stuck out for me, I think we equalled Sunderland's record from 1927. I think it's 17 consecutive games scoring 2 or more goals, which is phenomenal. When just for any team. I mean, we've seen this before. As Liverpool fans, you can score all the goals in the world and still not win. the league title. Just ask Brendan Rodgers about that. But even if you look at sort of our defensive concerns, I mean, we've played the last 3 games. Yeah, we've had a few shaky moments. Alisson's did bail us out. At the start of that Southampton game, Konate was, a little bit flaky against AC Milan. But we've come out of those games with 10 goals scored, none conceded. I'm sure several will argue that you've not come up against top 4 opposition there, but I think when you're looking at sort of the packed fixture schedule and coming off that international break, the mood's a bit sour after West Ham. I think it's absolutely sort of phenomenal, and you're sort of heading now in the right direction. You've got your midfielders coming back from injury, which is, that's been a consistent bugbear for us, hasn't it? It's looking at last season, everyone was thinking, oh, your defensive injury crisis is now moving up to midfield, but you've got Henderson back, you've got Milner back. I think Klopp came out today in his presser and he said Naby Keita and who's the other one who's coming back from injury? Two of them he said he was coming back from injury. I think Curtis said he's still going to need a bit more time.
I think Joe Gomez, wasn't there?
Joe Gomez, that was the one.
Yeah.
So I think I'm knocking on wood here, but realistically, you're sort of looking at getting over that bump in the road, so to speak, and at the perfect time in a season when you've got 9 games in December to look forward to. I mean, you obviously got AC Milan and the AFL Cup game, which Klopp might sort of experiment a bit with his lineup there just to give a couple of rest, which will be absolutely valuable, as we've seen with Robertson. So I think tremendous scoring record. Hopefully this sort of defensive record continues as we go on as well, and then it'll put us in a really good position for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely. But we've got a few comments here. We've got one from Paul saying, "Evening lads, it's been a while." It has been a while, to be honest. We haven't done one must be since the United game, I think. So we've missed a few games, to be fair. And we've also got Yuki in from sunny California. Nice one for jumping in, Yuki. But you just touched on there, Farrell, about midfielders, and I think we've got to talk about Thiago after the Southampton game, and to score a lovely goal, obviously, albeit deflected, but I reckon it was still going in anyway. Apart from the first 15 minutes, maybe it was a bit of a mad one, because obviously we scored nice and early, but there was a moment where he gets robbed by Ward-Prowse, and I think you mentioned it, Farrell. Alisson just majorly bails him out of that one, and then I think there was another moment in the second half, I think it was, where he tries to dive on the floor and do a diving header to try and flick it away, and just kind of misses the ball, and you're just oh my god, just fucking, they best not score off this. But apart from that, Keifer, he was just, I'm run out of words to describe how nice it is to watch him play football. It's just so visually pleasing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think personally for last season, that was probably one of the most frustrating things, because his season probably was as smooth as Liverpool's was in the fact that he felt like he couldn't put 2 or 3 matches together without getting a knockback, or him being paired with someone who he shouldn't be paired with, and you could just tell even though he's a fantastic midfielder, he's obviously his best position is in that number 8, and he did struggle when he was required to play in the 6. When Henderson and Fabinho were kind of playing centre half, but now obviously we're seeing that midfield on Saturdays. You can make cases for maybe 1 or 2 others, but that is on paper Liverpool's strongest midfield, isn't it? Henderson, Fabinho, Thiago, and I think it's the 3rd time they've played together. I think the derby last year, Palace early this year, and then Saturday. So there's such a new relationship kind of between the 3, isn't it? That's you've not really had time to kind of see blossom, but for the early signs, and especially Thiago and Fabinho, that relationship seems to be flourishing really nicely, because it's a solid base, and I think Thiago is one of those who he just needs that freedom, doesn't he? He kind of drifts in between pockets, and he sometimes comes a bit deeper to pick the ball up, and he's got an unbelievable passing range, and he just makes it look absolutely effortless. So yeah, to have that kind of, as Farrell said, having midfielders come back, and you can kind of play Thiago in kind of a true reflection, because as I said last year, it just you had everyone saying, "Oh, who's this player that you were signed?" You know what I mean? He came with such expectation, rightly or wrongly, but I think we all knew that we weren't seeing the best version of Thiago. I think obviously the back end of last season when Fabinho came into midfield, then we saw kind of Thiago, he was dominating games, wasn't he? But it really, for large parts, it just felt so unfair on him more than anything, because this is a man who's won 2 Champions Leagues. He's been at the pinnacle of European club football for years, And it felt like he was having to prove himself to like Arsenal fans, you know what I mean, or like, you know, and it was just a bit like, come on. But yeah, he was fantastic on Saturday, as I say. He just makes it look so effortless, and he did have those, you know, the two scares, and especially the one in the first half where Ward-Prowse came in and robbed him. But I think with Thiago, he's just, I don't know if it's a good thing, but he doesn't seem to panic, does he? So like, you know, he's always got another touch, and you know, at the minute it's nice because we're winning and everything, but he's kind of yearns that right, doesn't he, to kind of, he never breaks sweat, does he? I don't think I've seen him do a sprint yet. He just, and that isn't a criticism. That's because he's got it all up in his brain, isn't he? He's got, you know, he's so far clear ahead of everyone, like intelligent wise. So yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic to see him kind of kick on now, especially after that goal the other night, you know, and against Porto, it kind of got the plaudits it deserved. It was probably the best goal I've ever seen, like just in terms of technique and purity, and it reminded me of, you know, Stevie, the way he used to catch a ball. It was how pure it was and how sweet it was. And then on Saturday again, he was fantastic. So hopefully, you know, because he was boss there at Goodison last year, wasn't he? Before that was his first start, I think it was, or one of his first starts. So you know, he got that injury at the end, didn't he? But yeah, fingers crossed tomorrow night he can put in another good performance.
Yeah, and Farrell, I think he's one of those players in that time seems to slow down when he's got the ball in a way, because you can press him as hard as you want, but albeit obviously that Ward-Prowse one where he's I think the reverse angle where you can see his like panic face and you can see Alisson running out and he's like, oh fuck, what have I done? But largely he's just like Keifer said, like he's just got that extra sense which for a midfielder is so vital, to know what's around you, and the way he passes the ball. I think underrated how good he is in the air in terms of interceptions. He's great at them as well. And I think that the main thing for him and for Liverpool as a club is just keeping him fit, isn't it? I think that's the main thing. Him and Oxlade-Chamberlain, who, I mean, obviously Oxlade-Chamberlain might consider himself a bit unlucky to have not started that Southampton game after doing so well and putting in like, I think it was 5 straight starts, which is, I think, the first time he did that since like 2017-18, I think, which was nice to see. But Thiago, have you got any more words to describe Thiago Alcantara that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think, I mean, Keifer's hit the nail on the head there with this, I suppose it's Van Dijk-esque sort of calmness. You know, you do sort of look at him and times you think, oh, shouldn't you, I don't know, not be a bit more bothered, a bit more stressed? I mean, we know he's bothered. Obviously, he's committed to the cause. There's no question about that. Again, you know, as Keifer pointed out, with sort of the passing range, he's just I don't think we genuinely realise how fortunate we are on top of the team we have to have a player of his quality within that side. Because you look at sort of what we won with a midfield of, and absolutely no disrespect to it, it's a quality midfield, but of Fabinho, Henderson and Wijnaldum, and you've gone since and added Thiago Alcantara. We're talking about a Champions League winner. We're talking about a man that, you know, Pep Guardiola was desperate to get to Bayern Munich. He's not a shoddy player. We can all tell everyone that much. But it's one of those things. I think again, Keifer touched on it sort of earlier, but we didn't really get the chance to obviously see the best of him. Injuries played in a massive part, and obviously when Fabinho was sort of drafted into that sort of back line to cover and centre defence, Thiago was obviously constrained a bit more. You know, we couldn't exactly see, you know, the reasons why we brought him to the club. You know, not that he did badly, but there was a whole thing where, you know, everyone was sort of complaining of Thiago can't put in a tackle. It was like, well, yeah, but he wasn't necessarily brought in to be a defensive midfielder. We have Fabinho for that. We have arguably the world's best defensive midfielder for that very reason. So, you know, we're finally getting to see. I mean, it's that bizarre stat, isn't it, as you pointed to already, of how little we've seen that combined midfield of Henderson, Fabinho and Thiago. Now we're finally seeing that. We're reaping the rewards of that, and hopefully for the long run, fingers crossed, yeah, this festive run of fixtures doesn't create another issue in that sort of middle of the park.
Yeah, I'm even just touching on that a little bit. Like, it is mad. Like, you think when Thiago was signed, that was, I think, on paper, that was everyone's like, right, this is going to be a midfield going forward, and if you put that midfield three together, that is where we're going to dominate. And the fact that we've only seen it like a handful of times is a shame. And like we said, like, if Thiago stays fit and Fabinho and Hendo stay fit, then that is it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get into that 3. I think.
I think as well. Like now, it just feels like we have different options as well. Like obviously, with Chamberlain kind of having a bit of a renaissance, it's like for different games, kind of. It's not like we're just playing that same midfield. It's like Southampton at home. Maybe it's like you are going to see more of the ball. You do need that kind of more decisive kind of final third ball or whatever. You can throw Thiago in, but then somewhere maybe where it's going to be. I don't know, maybe tomorrow night at Goodison Park where, it is maybe going to be Rafa and 2 banks of 5 or 2 banks of 4 or whatever. Maybe you think, right, well, that's why you need someone like Chamberlain who's going to drag players out kind of thing. So it's just nice to have that because it feels like probably since Chamberlain's first season, we probably haven't had that because it has been Henderson, Wijnaldum, Fabinho. And don't get me wrong, that midfield is, I'm a massive Wijnaldum fan and obviously the other 2 lads as well. But it kind of felt like it was the same, and it worked, but it was kind of almost like a transformer midfield, wasn't it? It could adapt to anything. But now you've actually got, those 3 were racking up 150 games between them a season, weren't they? Which, is never going to kind of bode well. But now you've got, even, throw Harvey Elliott into that, throw Curtis Jones into that, throw Naby Keita into that. You've got 6, 7, 8, 9 lads, who can all kind of do different things and bring different things. And feels like so long since we've kind of had that squad depth. You only have to look at Manchester City and we've all kind of been not jealous, but like you kind of look at their depth at times and, hence why they're able to win, domestic trebles because they've just got like so much depth and it feels like we haven't had that. So just have it now and, actually be talking ahead of tomorrow night, actually who he's going to play. Is Chamberlain, does he deserve a start? Well, it's all positive, isn't it really?
I mean, you can understand, can't you? I mean, this is what Klopp was talking about at the start of the season when he was questioned, why haven't you replaced one? Obviously, finances played a part there with the impact of COVID. But, he sort of turned around and was, well, who am I going to get? Who am I going to get that's going to fill that sort of gap currently in world football that I can get for a reasonable price? You've got, as Keifer's point, you have Naby Keita, you've got Curtis Jones, you've got Harvey Elliott coming up. When the midfielders are all there and they're fit, and obviously there were questions constantly about if they're fit, which, I was one of those calling for us to replace Wijnaldum. I thought he was absolutely critical. As much as for his durability, as his natural ability, but it's when you do look at those options available, and it goes back to also, I'm going to go back to Robertson because, yes, the break did him the world of good, but having that competition there with Costas makes him a better player, and it'll be the same for those 3 that do get picked in the central midfield week in, week out. Having the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, who has looked better and better as the weeks go by with the solid run of games, having those men there in midfield sort of knocking on the door is going to push them, and we will see that hopefully if those lot can stay fit.
I think that midfield kind of crisis just before the international break. I think it, in a weird way, obviously, we kind of dropped points where we shouldn't have, but I think it has, and this is again, it's going to sound a bit odd, but you kind of take the West Ham result out of it. I think it kind of did us the world of good because we had to give Chamberlain those 4 or 5 games. And I think if you don't give Chamberlain those 4 or 5 starts.
Has Keifer died?
He might make a comeback.
He's
back.
He's back.
Sorry. So if you drop him into Milan on Tuesday, I think he struggles. You know what I mean? Like if he hasn't played those kind of run of 4 or 5 games, but now there's, like I said, there's chat of him starting tomorrow night, which is obviously due to kind of getting through those kind of teams.
The perks are going live, ladies and gentlemen.
It's usually my internet that buggers up.
we'll keep talking.
It's the same with it's the same with.
Oh, you're back.
He's now giving us a little Eminem rendition. Now he's back.
Is
he back? He's back.
We're back. I don't know where I got to on that, but I was just waxing lyrical about Oxlade-Chamberlain.
It's because it was stopping and it's going. It was like, is he doing a fucking rap god verse there or no? But no, I'll talk for a bit just while your internet maybe itself out.
Finds its form.
But Farrell, you mentioned earlier about Klopps' press conference today, and that's kind of why we did the pod today, just because so we could obviously digest that news, and obviously the news about Joe Gomez and the news about Naby Keita being back in training next week is really, really good news, and also the news about Bobby, which is I think it's going to be a couple of weeks till he's back in kit, and obviously, like we just touched on, another great player, Curtis Jones, is still sidelined with the eye injury, which still is a massive shame for him, I think. And I think at this time as well, where he could have been getting a few more minutes, it is a bit of a shame to see him sidelined with such a weird injury. And I would have loved to have seen another Curtis Jones belter, but at Goodison rather than Anfield this time. Obviously, got that amazing goal in the FA Cup, which I would have fucking loved to have seen replicated. But yeah, let's get stuck into the Everton game a little bit then. Obviously, I was looking at the stats before, and we haven't won at their place since 2016, which is... It feels a bit mad, doesn't it? Because obviously the 90+4 Mane goal, which we all love, and I just love watching. I could watch it on a loop endlessly, just like the flair thrown on the pitch and Everton fans just like fucking fuming and whatever else. But it's a mad one because we always batter them at Anfield, but I think we've drawn 4 in a row, which at Goodison, which I mean it's a bit mad considering how often we do beat them at Anfield. But this time I feel like it's. I don't want to get overconfident because I don't want to go into it going, right, we're going to absolutely batter them, because I said this earlier, like to someone at work, like we could be like champions of Europe and they could be in League 2 and I'd still be worried about going to Goodison Park. It's just that thing that's just inherent in me veins that I'm just going to always be worried about going to that place. But obviously, if you look at like what they've been up to this season, like they're not great, are they? Obviously, they've had a lot of injuries. Calvert-Lewin and Decore, Gray was out, and now he's back again. Came on, I think, the last 20 minutes against Brentford. But is this the time where we're gonna absolutely batter them, Farrell? What do you reckon?
I've been sort of out of the business of predictions of late. I was severely cautious when we were heading towards facing sort of Southampton. I thought that'd be closer to a 2-1 than the 4-0 battering we administered. It's as you say, I mean, the record speaks for itself, and I'm sure Rafa will be having a chat with the lads just to say, look, their record here isn't fantastic. Let's see if we can prolong that. That's his team talk, mostly more or less done for him. I'm more confident that we can, again, I say hesitantly, grab a win there. It's again, I think it's safe to say it's not going to be a dominant, at least not as far as the scoreline suggests, display. But I could see us. I just think the form is dire compared to ours. We are on that upward trajectory from those sort of first 3 games back from the international break. Form, it's a cliche, does go out the window to a certain extent when we go over to Goodison. But I think I'm just feeling a bit more hopeful. As we say, we're getting those midfielders back. We're kind of more or less solid as a unit. There aren't sort of major sort of concerns there. So the signs are all positive. It just depends what the football gods have in store for us.
Yeah, Keifer, what are you thinking if your internet's back? It looks like you're all right now.
I put my 4G on, don't worry. I think Farrell was spot on. I mean, it's one of those you do worry, regardless of how good our form is. It's their cup final, isn't it? To be blunt and put it that way. And I think obviously again, we know how good Rafa can be defensively with his 2 banks of 4 and how kind of rigid his system can be. Albeit it doesn't like he's got the kind of right players to kind of execute it at the minute, but. I mean, stranger things have happened, but I do think we are due a win. As you said, it's 2017 or 2016, whenever the last time we won there with that late Mane goal. But I think Klopp was quite. He does it quite a lot with the derby. I feel like he said today, he doesn't play it up at all, does he? Or it might have been after his Southampton press conference, but he basically said, like, I'm not gonna kind of make it into a storm. And I think that's good because I think at the minute, kind of when you are going for a league title, you want every 3 points is 3 points, isn't it? And without sounding like a PR machine, like it is the right kind of mentality to install, isn't it? Regardless of whether it's Everton, United, and whoever. And you think you saw that with the United victory. I think there's quotes that came out saying at half time that they thought it could be better and the level, the level could go up. United were there for the taking, so it's. I don't think they're going to go into this thinking, right, these are 14th, 15th, wherever they are, and we're, 3rd or 2nd. I think that's the kind of the kind of thing that does reassure me, because I think the last thing you can do is go into this derby or a game with this kind of magnitude where we all know form goes out the window and kind of think, we're gonna breeze these today, because as I say, Goodison's one of those grounds where, the crowd get on your back, and it'll remain to be seen if it's on the Everton players' backs or on the Liverpool players' backs, depending on what minute the goals come in. But it is a hostile ground, isn't it? Like in the sense of it's it's compact, isn't it? It's tight to the players, and I think you'd ask any Liverpool player, they probably wouldn't like playing there. This squad collectively hasn't got a great record there, so fingers crossed we can put that right, because it always, as you say, we batter them at Anfield every year, but there's just something about Goodison, and I'm not sure what it is. So yeah, fingers crossed for tomorrow. But I'd probably go 2-0 if I had to give a score for it.
It was interesting, wasn't it, for Klopp's presser? Because I think he was almost sort of trying to take the sting out of it by sort of going, look. I think he made a comment to one of the reporters being like, I'm not going to expand on those comments post Southampton because you lot don't write this properly. And I think he was sort of generally sort of getting at sort of treating. I mean, Klopp, we know Klopp's like every game's when it comes sort of thing. That's always been the way. And he was always sort of trying to sort of almost reduce the magnitude of the game and go, look, this is just another game. And I don't know whether that speaks more of the fact of how much he perceives the magnitude of that game to be, that he is sort of actively trying to sort of take the sting out of it. But I mean, obviously, this is how we're going to want to approach this. Is how if we are going to walk away with Goodison with all 3 points, it's going to be almost paradoxically treating it not like a Merseyside derby and just another one of the many games we will have to play this season. Go
on, Farrell, finish it.
Oh yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I was just saying, we just got another one. Hopefully, we've just got to win just to keep the pressure on with the title race.
I was going to say as well, I think if there's one thing to take maybe from kind of learning those lessons, I think it's the same story that's been with Old Trafford, isn't it? For the past 4 or 5 years, they have been woeful, and we go to Old Trafford every year, and we kind of play the badge and the team and the name as opposed to what 11 is on the pitch, and we've kind of been dragged down to their level at times. We've been caught in kind of scrappy games, at Old Trafford, and to whether we caught them on a bad day, but that day at Old Trafford, last month we were unbelievable, and okay, they were in a really bad run of form, but that was probably their best team they've had over the 5 years, isn't it? That we've kind of gone to Old Trafford under Klopp. So I think if you can kind of treat it the same, if you know what I mean, kind of if you just again play 14th place side away from home, pretend it's I was going to say Brentford, but don't pretend it's Brentford because that was horrible to watch.
Yeah, I want a 3-3. Fuck that.
But you know what I mean? Kind of if you kind of play what the face value of the side is, and play them what they are on paper as opposed to kind of what it means to kind of the wider society, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, to be honest. That's what I was going to say. Like after you were speaking, Farrell, like about the Old Trafford thing, and I think that's quite a big analogy, really. That we've gone there, and obviously we beat them last year, which was without fans, which kind of a bit of a hollow victory, and that's why I think Everton's win at Anfield is kind of largely the same, because it's like, was it the same as a full Anfield? Would you have done the same thing? I don't think you would have, even if we had fucking Caroline and Carroll at centre half in that game with a full crowd. We probably still would have drew. Do you know what I mean? We still would have got a result there. But I think that's kind of that game at Old Trafford last month, like Keifer said, like that was kind of like the acid test to, are we back in the funk? And that proved that we were. And I think this is another game that's like, we're going to another hostile environment like Old Trafford is. And I just think, I'm hoping that we just a nice early goal like we did against Southampton and just absolutely fucking bath them, to be honest, because it's going to be. I just want to see another load of videos on Twitter where their fans are just going absolutely ballistic, and that was just after last game.
Fantastic, wasn't it?
I was just like, inject that straight into my veins. Like, it's
just
so
clueless. I think Rafa's quite rigid in his approaches, isn't he? He kind of has a set way of playing, and it doesn't seem to have changed over the past 10 years or so. And I think when he has, that's why I think we always do quite well in Europe under Rafa. That kind of that set style of play with his two banks does work, and it's almost a low block at times, isn't it? But I think, like you say, when you're missing Calvert-Lewin, and I think the two wide lads have been good for them, haven't they? Gray and Townsend, they've probably been the two better players for them this season. But I think when you're missing someone who's kind of focal as Calvert-Lewin, I think you're always going to struggle, because the essence of Gray and Townsend is get balls in the box, and apart from that, they don't really, Rondon, like what is going on there? It's what outs do they have? So, and I don't think Calvert-Lewin's back tomorrow, is he? I think he's still, so he's going to be probably Richarlison down the middle or something. And I mean, he'll probably entertain himself for 90 minutes rather than look to kind of go up against Van Dijk or whoever's alongside him. So, yeah.
Yeah. You look at those 11s, well, don't you? You look at those 11s and you just think, on paper, we should absolutely batter these, but I mean, such is the nature of the derby. It doesn't, at least not Goodison, doesn't always sort of end that way. But I think you've got to just think on the form we're in, the form they're in. It's the foundations are there potentially for a big victory. I'm not feeling as confident as a sort of a Southampton or Arsenal-esque victory, but I don't think it'd be outside the realm reality to suggest that we're perfectly more than capable of getting the 3 points necessary at Goodison.
I think composure for is massive though, isn't it, as well? Like, it's the first derby with a full Goodison, isn't it, for 2 years or however long it's been. So, well, maybe I think it's 3 years now, actually, isn't it? But
God blimey.
Yeah, so like, I think you kind of just got to control the crowd, as kind of cliche as it is. And I think, if you can kind of keep the ball for the first 10, 15 minutes and kind of settle them down, I think that's probably your first task, isn't it? And, kind of then you probably could try and build your attacks and whatever. But I think that's probably their biggest asset tomorrow, in a sense, that the hostility of the crowd, because as we said, they've got nothing on real, real quality on the pitch. So, if you can kind of, I think if you can kind of the midfield as well, you think it'll be Thiago, Henderson, Fabinho, that composure, that experience, and you're hoping they'll just kind of take it in their stride. But, like I say, will be a tough game. But like, as Farrell says, if you just look at the teams, it should be no more difficult than at Southampton. But I don't think that'll be the reality. I think it'll be a lot tighter.
Yeah, and like we touched on before, like how Klopp likes like trying to play it down, but he'll be under no illusions that it's going to be a fight for every ball. I think like Dave's put in the comments here, let's hope Everton plan on playing football tomorrow, which is kind of what Klopp said, wasn't it, after the Southampton game? He said like something like, we're going to go there with a plan. Let's just hope that they actually plan on playing football, or a word to that effect, which was, I think, like you said, Keith, that's kind of obviously the hostile environment and kind of trying to snap people. That's the only way that they're going to kind of obviously do that, get stuck in. Like a derby's always like that. Obviously, yellow cards don't even get given that often unless it's a really bad tackle in derbies. That's kind of more leeway, isn't it, in derby games? But I feel like that's the only way that they're going to get any joy. They're going to have to throw a few tackles in, G the crowd up, and then kind of feed off each other. And I think that's, I mean, I'm clutching at straws there for them, and I don't even feel sorry for them at all. I just hope we just absolutely fucking batter
I think
them.
as well, it's going to be builders. I've already seen a few things on social media, and it's the whole, people already talking about Van Dijk and his injury last year, and even the tackle that Richarlison put on Thiago towards the end of the game. It's going to be, I think, Klopp, after that game, he came out and he was, pretty disgusted at their attempt of kind of playing football and some of the challenges. He was rightly furious, wasn't he? So I think that's probably part of it, because, as I say, tomorrow it'll be builders, Van Dijk versus Pickford, like it's Eddie, some kind of Eddie Hearn promotion kind of thing. But I think he's right to take this thing out of it. I mean, it's probably not what we want to hear, but I think, as Farrell said, it's maybe kind of a counter product, isn't it, to kind of think, right, well, I know how big it's going to be, let me just ease it a bit, and then hopefully it's a bit more manageable tomorrow night. But it'll remain to be seen, won't it?
Yeah, but let's get stuck into, before we go, let's get into starting 11 predictions. I think we're all, well, for me anyway, I'll let you know what I think. I think in terms of from the Southampton game, I think Matip in for Konate, and I think that's it. So that'll be Alisson, Trent, Van Dijk, Matip, Robbo, Hendo, Fabinho, Thiago, Salah, Jota, Mane.
Yeah, I would say the exact same, to be fair. Though, I mean, it's hard to tell the Chamberlain one, isn't it? Because I think, obviously, to ask any player to play 4 or 5 in a row, whatever he would have played, and obviously, as you touched on, it's his kind of longest kind of spell in the starting 11, wasn't it, since 17-18? So you can either look at that and think, right, well, was he resting kind of Chamberlain for Wednesday? Is he kind of going to give it him on merit? But I would flip it the other way and say, he's obviously putting minutes in Henderson's legs for Wednesday. But I mean, as I touched on earlier, I wouldn't, obviously, that midfield of Henderson, Fabinho, Thiago is what I want to see. I think we all want to see it. We've got them fit and firing, so why would we not play it? But I would be more than comfortable with Oxlade-Chamberlain being in there. If it needs be, but I'd probably be more happy with him coming off the bench if it was we needed him on 60 or something, or 65, and you do need a goal or you need a second goal. I think he's probably going to be more effective. The way I always judge it is, I think, if you're there at a game and you need a goal, who do you want coming off the bench? You want Henderson or do you want Oxlade-Chamberlain? You know what I mean? And which one would generate less groans? Or it would be Oxlade-Chamberlain, wouldn't it? So I don't think that's Klopp's logic, but that would be my logic. So I'd go the same as you. Matip would be the only change for me, and that isn't because I don't trust Konate. I mean, we saw at Old Trafford last month. He's more than capable of kind of holding his own. But I just think it's that kind of experience, and it is going to be, as we've kind of just touched on just previously, it is going to be a spiky game, isn't it? It's going to be a spiky affair. It's going to be, the atmosphere, will be. It will be one of those where you just need to take an extra touch to settle it down. You don't want to be doing anything to kind of give their crowd any kind of incentive. So I think that's probably why he goes for Matip. But, as I say, if either of them, if Konate keeps his place or, if Oxlade-Chamberlain comes in, I'd be still more than happy.
Yeah, and I think even on the Konate, I think it's not even a slight on him, is it? Like, obviously, like you said, Keifer, we went to Old Trafford and he played really well, like Trent getting forward and him being on that right-hand side with that pace to kind of keep their wingers in check. But I think at Goodison, it feels like it's really... It feels like it's half the size, to be honest, the pitch in comparison to Old Trafford. So, what are you thinking, Farrell? Like, what in terms of?
I'm going to be a bit difficult, lads, and I'm going to say he's going to keep Konate in the side. I think, I don't know. I remember sort of going back to the United game that we're also fond of for obvious reasons. I don't think anyone was expecting him to lob in sort of Konate into a high pressure sort of scenario like that can be, and it didn't turn out to be in the end. But he added that sort of element of physicality. Not that Matip can't provide that, but I just think it's that sort of game. I can see Klopp going, actually, I think we could use a bit of brawn, a bit of extra brawn in this. If Konate pulls out the kind of performance people perhaps weren't expecting him to pull out against United at Old Trafford, it could be a very, very interesting scoreline for us. So I do reckon, I think it's a pretty good chance he'll hold on to Konate alongside Van Dijk. Otherwise, I don't think there'll be that many changes. I think there was some talk on Twitter of resting Robbo again, but I think he pretty much goes with the same back line.
Yeah, I think the Robbo one, you want Robbo to be a dirty bastard. You want Robbo just to be in there, just to wind people up, get stuck in, elbows in the back, the stuff that's what derbies are made of. And I mean that's a good thing, like you said there, Farrell. Like Konate and Matip, we won't be sad either way. Whoever starts in that one, and that's like a really big thing considering like Konate's made 5 appearances so far, and obviously had a few shaky moments, but his pace and like you said, his brawn, his energy and his strength might be really handy tomorrow in a game, and it'd be a really big test. And if he passed it, then you'd be like, fucking hell, he's keeping his place for the long haul if he did so. But I think you've already had your score predictions, Keifer. Did you say 2-0? Did you? 2-0,
yeah.
2-0. Any particular goal scorers you're thinking? Mo Salah to get another one?
Alisson Brace. No, I was being serious. I fancy Jota. I'll go Jota and Salah.
Nice. What are you thinking, Farrell?
I think we'll grab 2 as well. Jota and Salah. I'm in 2 minds about this. I did the same thing against Southampton and we battered them. I'm going to go for a 2-1 again. Against Everton, just purely for the occasion's sake. But yeah, I think Jota and Salah are pretty much fair bets, aren't they, at this point?
Yeah. Well, I'm going for 4-0 because 3 consecutive 4-0s. Fuck it.
Why not? Why not?
I'm hoping it's just like we've touched on the Old Trafford thing. Like, I'm just hoping it's going to be like that perfect storm where we've already showed that we can do it in a hostile environment against one of our rivals, and it's like, well, what's coming to Goodison then in comparison to that? Especially how bad our Old Trafford record's been. So yeah, fuck it. Go for 4-0 Yuki in the comments is going for 2-0.
It's massive, isn't it? Obviously, it's big enough, regardless of league position, but it kind of really does set the tone for the next month. The next kind of up and probably to that Chelsea game where it seems there's a game every 3 days. And again, if you kind of bite-sized chunk it, if you kind of get to Sunday and you've beaten Everton and you've beaten Wolves, which again, two sides that you probably fancy yourselves again, but two tricky away trips. I'd class them in that kind of cluster of places you probably wouldn't want to go if you needed to win. Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing. I mean, we've got a perfect record at Wolves since they've come up, but they're never a nice side to play, are they? And same with Everton, really. So I think if we do manage to kind of overcome whatever kind of is thrown at us tomorrow, I think then it's like you're looking at kind of up until Chelsea and you're thinking, right, it's on. Especially after that United Chelsea result on Sunday afternoon. It is. I think that kind of gave everyone a bit of a kick, didn't it? Because there's a few people some people, there's kind of as we were saying before, the kind of moaners who seem to think a season is 20 games or so, and we were 4 or 5 points off them. Okay, it's not ideal, but now it's like, right, win tomorrow, and I think we go top, or depending on what happens at City Villa. So yeah, it's certainly a lot riding on it, isn't there? And it's like, as I say, tease up the next month. It tease up the festive period, doesn't it?
It's interesting how perceptions change, isn't it? As I think you pointed to rightly there, Keifer, that loss to West Ham and then you're 4 points, only 4 points behind Chelsea before you've even hit December. And people are going, well, that's it. The title's been decided. There we go. Champions of Europe, champions of England. It's ridiculous. We're not even we're still not halfway through the season. And we won those 3 games. They dropped points to United, a team we utterly embarrassed at Old Trafford. They will drop points. Categorically, Chelsea will drop more points. You could have a situation where we do beat Everton, we beat Wolves, and they've drawn or lost a game, and suddenly we find ourselves top of the table, depending on what happens with City's games. So they're not going to run away with it. It's going to be a tight one this year, I reckon. I'm fairly confident in that. So it's just about a matter of just winning these games that can turn out to be banana skins for us.
Yeah, and just looking at the table, like briefly, like there's only 2 points like separating the top 3. So it is funny, like when you draw, like, or if you lose a game to West Ham and you're like you said, 4 points behind, and people are like, well, the season's over. You're like, have you ever watched a game of footy or a season of footy in your fucking life? Because you've got absolutely no idea.
I think as well. Sorry, but I think the last 2, 3, 4 years maybe have turned us into really bad losers. And I think that City as well, as I said before, like 95, 96, 97, 98, 99 points, just as great as it is. People forget, and I know it was a dodgy season, but Leicester won the league on 81, 82 points. You know what I mean? Like there's this year, someone probably wins the league between 86 and 90, I think, just because of who takes points off each other. It's because of how good we were 18, 19, 19, 20. We've kind of think anything less than 97 points and you're going to come second. Well, it's not the reality. And especially when you've got 2 teams like that and 3 teams now kind of going in a 3-way contest. And so I think it's as you said, it's perception, isn't it? And kind of people are so quick to kind of be like, I told you so, or, we needed another midfielder or whatever. So, if we don't win tomorrow, it's certainly not over. There's still 25 games or 24 games of football left to play in the league this season. That's a lot of points to play for.
Yeah, I think that's like you said, like people just wanting to have the "I told you so" moment, which is just hilarious. Like they've obviously got like a draft full on Twitter, just like told you we should have signed this player, blah blah blah. Just like it's just boring, isn't it? But Chris has put in a comment saying 3-0 job done, Salah, Mane, Thiago. Oh, I'd love a fucking another Thiago goal. I would absolutely.
I really want a Van Dijk goal. I really want a Van.
Oh. I'll settle for both. It's rather remarkable, isn't it? I think we said sort of the amount of complaints about Thiago's sort of goal record, and he scores that absolute beauty of a goal against Porto and follows it up with another. But the next one, I mean, yeah, Van Dijk would be absolutely phenomenal. But I think we have to just take it a step at a time, isn't it? As Keifer's pointed out, there's 25 league games remaining. We've got an incredible record in Europe. We've got more points, ourselves than the rest of our sort of fellow group members have collectively. Context is really, really key here. We're having a pretty decent season so far. All things considered. I think it is that sort of element. I think I'm sure you lads have had this as well. You put anything out vaguely positive out on Twitter, and that there'll be one little bastard who has to have their 2 cents on how wrong you are. But I think all things considered, this is far from a disastrous season, and we're getting players back in from injury. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Harvey Elliott in the new year, back on the pitch, and then I think you look at that Liverpool team, then you think, oh, if you can all stay fit, you're in for a shout there. At the absolute least, you're in the conversation, which is where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, like Harvey Elliott coming back. I mean, he's back running and doing ball work. So fucking hell, if he's back in January, that is just a huge boost, because obviously, like I think you touched on it earlier, Keifer, like about how good he's been coming into the team. So to have him back, I mean, it's not as sexy as signing a fucking 60 million pound player from whoever in Europe, but the fact that he's came into the team against like Burnley and Chelsea and done so well and surprised everyone by being started in those games is a huge testament to
if we'd signed him, though. If we'd signed him, the perception around him would be completely different. If he hadn't played for Liverpool and you'd signed him for 30 million, you'd be like, by God, we've had an all right summer window. Do you know what I mean? Ibrahim Konate and Harvey, you'd be like, job done. It's the fact that he's we've obviously brought him from Fulham's academy, developed him. Klopps given him that chance of that incredible spell in the Championship. We do. It's remarkable how those little things, and suddenly that you get the tirade of negativity online on Twitter. We're in an okay place, aren't we? More or less.
And you think as well, especially, I'm glad kind of you guys touched on it, because I didn't want to be the one to say the words, but kind of the aura of a new signing if he comes back in January, and like, especially if he does come back as kind of Mo and Sadio go, people forget that his preferred position is off the right, isn't it? So, he's kind of look how well he's adapted to a centre midfield role, and if you need him to, I think Salah and Mane only missed 2 games anyway, but if you've got Harvey Elliott coming back for that period. I'm not saying he's obviously to the level of Mo Salah or Sadio Mane. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But, it's at the minute, I think that's the one thing on the back of, in the back of people's minds, isn't it? AFCON, you'd be lying to yourself if you said you haven't thought about it. It hasn't quite given me sleepless nights yet. I mean, I won't rule it out. But, that is kind of the game changer, isn't it? Especially in the form that Salah's in at the minute, and even Mane in this season. But, if you've got someone like Harvey Elliott coming back, and, you've got Jota, you've got Firmino, and then you've got Divock for the odd game or so. You'll be fine. And then you through that, and before you know it, you're on the home straight with 10 games left, 10 cup finals. So yeah, and it's like as Farrell says, it's far from disastrous what people have made out. That international break after West Ham was just. I didn't even go on my phone on Twitter much, because it was just. You would have, like as I said, you would have thought that the league was won there and then for Chelsea or for City. But as I say, perspective is just so key, isn't it?
You don't want to curse it, but if you think, isn't it? It's Brentford and Crystal Palace. They reckon, they reckon Salah and Mane will miss. Hopefully not more than that. But if you think you've got sort of a forward line of, as Keifer pointed out, Harvey can play there. He has played there, and he's done a rather good job of it. You've got that forward line of, Jota, Harvey Elliott. You've got. Let's not forget about Taki Minamino. Klopp's been singing his praises in his pressers whenever he gets the opportunity. I know we're not talking about, a fellow who's going to go and get, 30, 40 goals a season like Salah might, but, it's someone there who has sort of enjoyed an upward trajectory since that pre-season when everyone sort of stood up and said, actually, we've bought a decent player from Salzburg. we're coming up against Brent, and that's no disrespect to Brentford, no disrespect to Crystal Palace, but we're not coming up against Manchester City and Chelsea in those two fixtures. So you sort of think we should just be able to manage to get through those fixtures. Not with ease, but I think we're more than capable with the options that we have left remaining.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even thought about putting Harvey Elliott on the right, at right wing. I hadn't even thought about it, but I think my concern was always before he'd started playing recently was the pace thing. But I think he's proven in the games that he's played in midfield on the right of a three in midfield that game intelligence and the know-how to pick up the right spaces and whatever else, and the agility and the eye for the pass. He's more than capable of standing in there for 2 games or however long it's necessary before we get the big fellas back.
And he had a good relationship with Trent. There was that kind of right hand side. The 3 of them, wasn't there? There's Elliott, Trent, and Salah. They kind of formed something quite nice in their kind of brief kind of games together. And as Farrell says, it is only, without turning it into an Africa Cup of Nations preview, it is only Brentford and Crystal Palace, isn't it? So again, this for me, it's still Chelsea's massive, and then that's when you kind of go again. You reset yourself and you think, right, it's 1 game a week now in January, or one game every 4 days or something. So it's tomorrow, 1st of December, starts a big December, starts a big Christmas period. Get the Merry Christmas Everton songs out. 3 points at Goodison Park. That will do me.
That would be the perfect beginning of December, wouldn't it? 9 fixtures, and to start it off with like a 4 or 5-0 win over Everton would just be absolutely fucking glorious. So let's hope for that. But I said to the lads before we started that it'd only be half an hour, and we're now getting to nearly double that. So let's get the fuck out of here. So nice one to Keifer, a nice one to Farrell for making his debut today, and of course nice one to everyone in the comments for watching. And if you're not watching live, then if you're watching later on, then nice one for watching as well. Please do subscribe and like the video as well, because that helps us out a lot. And we'll see you hopefully the end of the week when we're celebrating a boss win over the Ev, and we've battered them at Goodison. So up the Reds.